Hello! It's Levels Plus Whenever time. Anyway, I'm getting used to this new title still. Welcome to episode 63. And if the footage doesn't quite give it away, we're going to be talking about Splatoon 3 impressions this episode. Which also happens to be the pickup for this week. I also got the new Doctor Strange movie, finally. The reason I am picking this footage is I'm actually in this footage. I am Wildcat JF, and just want to give a big thanks to Keita Nash for inviting me to play last night on her first stream for Splatoon 3. I'll go ahead and put a link in the description so you can check her out. She's a lot of fun. It's a community that I'm very happy to be a part of. I'm still getting used to these silly dualies in that splash wall, I have to say. But that's not all we're doing today. We're also going to have some Dreamcast stuff. 9-9 passed yesterday at the time of this recording. And I always like to do something on Levels Plus for the Dreamcast anniversary. So we're going to be talking about some of my favorite music and intros of the Dreamcast after Splatoon. So let's go ahead and jump into the Splatoon 3 impressions. I'm going to keep spoilers for solo campaign to a minimum. Since the game is so new, I don't want to spoil it for anybody too much beyond like some gameplay stuff perhaps. I don't want to get into anything story-wise. I will just say that as of getting into the third major area, not the tutorial area, but the actual maps you wander around and have a lot more say in doing that type of gameplay. It's fantastic. This is easily the best solo campaign in any of the Splatoon games so far. And I just have been loving this newfound focus on an overworld hub exploration and the Octo expansion like level structure where you get to hop into a stage, try to get through it. Some stages offer alternative weapons. And then you jump in, you do your best at it. There's no hidden stuff in the stages anymore. It's now all in the hub world. And you just do the missions, get the eggs, and then you go back to the hub and you try to clear out all of the fuzzy bits to get to explore more. And one of the things I've really been enjoying actually is once I get to a new area, seeing how much I can get done before even jumping into a level. It's a lot of fun just doing that piece, which is surprising me because I did not necessarily expect to just absolutely have such a grand time in the hub part of the solo campaign. But that is proving to be my favorite piece. And again, I'm not going to get into story stuff, but I will say the music is also the best in the solo campaign, and that includes Octo expansion. It's definitely got that Splatoon 1-2 main story vibe in terms of the instrumentation and all that, but it's done in a way that reminds me a lot of Octo expansion. So it's really the best of both worlds there. As for multiplayer, this was my first real experience playing multiplayer online with peeps. And it went more or less without a hitch. There was a couple communication errors, so it's authentic to the Splatoon experience. But I will say that it definitely feels better. I played a little bit of Turf, and I played some ranked. I did a bit of Clam Blitz and Splat Zones so far. I haven't played Rainmaker or Tower yet. And both of those are as fun as they've been in the past. The new weapons are making things interesting. The new specials are making things interesting. The new mechanics are making things interesting. I still haven't really got used to using the new squid surge and squid whatever the jump out of ink defensive move is. I'm gonna have to get that into my repertoire so I do a little bit better with that. Um, but it's still good Splatoon fun, and I've been having an absolute blast playing this game. Solo in multiplayer and with Kita and her husband and a couple of the community members there. This was just so much fun. Like, just jumping back into this was just an absolute delight. I'm still kind of getting the rust shaken off from not playing Splatoon 2 for a long time. But there was a couple matches where this just really started to click and reconnect that really good vibe that I love about this series. And it's just really, really good. There's so much quality of life stuff too. I didn't play Salmon Run yet, but I watched Kita play it, and there's so much quality of life there. There's so much quality of life here. So much quality of life in the single player. The fact that you don't have to listen to the broadcast every time the maps change. It's just something you can have on the side. The lobby having the ability to just goof around and practice with your squad mates. That's a really nice little feature. These new lockers are a lot of fun to just kind of tinker around with. It's just another thing to collect. The lore in Solo is really fascinating, and there's a lot of just streamlining of features there as well that just makes Splatoon 3 easily the best of the series. It's not evolutionary. It's not going to blow your mind in terms of completely changing how the game works. That's not what this is about. It's really about taking what worked well in the last two games and polishing that experience to an absolute sheen. And even at launch, at this stage, without any of the stuff they're going to be adding over the next 2 years, this is the best Splatoon game. I can honestly say that, without even considering the upcoming expansion, DLC solo stuff, any of the additional weapons and gear that's going to be coming out, new maps, new music. It's already there. The soundtrack in this game is already the best soundtrack in the series, and I love Splatoon music. So that says a lot when I say that this has the best music in the series. Everything they've introduced in here is just like impeccable. Another really great thing is that gear rotates more than once a day. It rotates every 8 hours apparently. So you can now buy stuff 3 times a day. In terms of mild complaints, and these are really mild. I wish you could scan Amiibo without having to have both Joy-Cons. I don't have both Joy-Cons anymore. My left Joy-Con I sold in to Gamerson Control last year. Letting him know that it had drift problems. And he does a lot of repairing, so I was just like, here you go. With that knowledge, you can do what you want with it. And he bought it from me. So my other left Joy-Con, which was a Hori split pad one, or not split pad, their control pad one, worked great until I dropped it, and then I got a chip in it, so I couldn't put it back together. So I need to probably just buy another one of those on the cheap and just save myself some money so I don't have to buy a Pro controller or new Joy-Cons so I can get the amiibo, because I have all of the amiibo as of next weekend. Inkling Boy 2, as I like to refer to him, is back in stock at Best Buy. That's the only one I didn't have. So I can get all of the new gear tied to the amiibo if I could get the the amiibo reader to work. And it doesn't work without that extra thing. And I don't have a Pro controller. I have a 8-bit controller that's been working great in every other capacity, except it doesn't have the ability to read amiibos. So that is a little bit of a frustration. The Splatoon 2 unlock stuff is nice, but it really didn't do a whole lot for like ranked, so you're still starting at level 1. It did get you to like B- if you had enough hours in ranked, which is nice, so you can just kind of jump right into ranked right away. You could skip doing the tutorial stuff in Salmon Run. So that's cool. But on the whole, it would have been nice to like have all the weapons available instead of just like, oh, you get to pick 3 through the gold licenses and that's it. It would have been nice if your turf rank would have been a little bit higher than just 1. But I understand that they're trying to make the field even, but at the same time, this game is not that revolutionary to make me feel like a complete reset was necessary. But honestly, that's about it. Like, I don't really have any complaints. There's so many little things that have been tweaked and made better about this experience. It's the best looking of the games. It's the best sounding of the games. It's the most fun playing of the games so far. It's incredibly responsive. Just an absolute wonderful time, and I'm looking forward to spending way more time playing it with a bunch of different people and seeing how it goes. Let's get started with the intros. And some of these have been HDified, so they won't look quite the same as they originally did, but I don't care. Let's start with probably one of the most epic intros of all time, honestly, in terms of player customization, Soul Calibur. This still is one of the best fighting game intros in my opinion. I think that it just really captures the essence of what this series is about, and was a showcase for the Dreamcast at launch. Because the original arcade Soul Calibur did not look this nice by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever. It did not look this good. But the thing that really made Soul Calibur's intro stand out is the fact that you could pick what it was for the most part. All of these pieces are not in the original intro in this order. Rock, for example, won't even be in the intro at first because he's not an initially unlockable character. You have to unlock him first. Usually it's Sophitia here instead of Ivy, for example. So there's a lot of little nuances that you can put in to just make it your own intro. You could just make it all about your favorite characters, or you can make it like, here's all the Soul Edge characters who are coming back. There's not quite enough to just have an all-woman trailer, for example, but you could get decently close. In fact, that kind of looks like what they did in this last part. So this is just super cool. I've always had a lot of respect for this intro and its ability to let the player have some say in how it plays. You get to pick the characters and all that. I just think that's super cool. I've always respected Soul Calibur for having this level of customization. And it really just gets you hyped. It does a fantastic job. The music is wonderful. Just does a great job of getting you pumped to play the game. Next up is Resident Evil Code Veronica. Another really amazing intro. this one has been HDified from the GameCube port, but I don't think that's going to drastically affect the FMV here. So,
Her name is Claire Redfield.
the reason why I've always liked this particular intro is it makes Claire into a badass. So, this whole action movie sequence of her running down this hallway in an Umbrella secret lab with all these guards chasing her, and then all of a sudden this helicopter shows up and just starts destroying the building, but misses her entirely, and then just decides, you know what? I don't care about this building. We're going to destroy the rest of it as we try to stop this one person from being inside. It's just bonkers. And I just think that it just really did a great job at establishing Claire, as she's come a long way since Resident Evil 2. Look at her just running around in this complex, dodging bullets. And then this part. This part is why this is even here. She drops the gun. You get this cool framing, and then she just drops, grabs it, fires, and then boom, just knocks at all these guys. It just looks so cool. It looks so cool. I just remember being blown away by this moment at the beginning. And probably even more than RE2 made me really like Claire as a character. It's unfortunate that the rest of this game does a really, really good job at trying to undermine that by having Claire get infatuated with Steve, but at the very least, this intro really did set her up to be a very strong, badass lady that I still think hasn't quite been matched by anything that's come since, in a lot of ways. On the subject of Capcom, we'll jump over to Techromancer. This got an exclusive Dreamcast anime intro as an unlockable, and is anime as hell. Clearly this was not animated at the quality of a typical anime, but they did a fantastic job using static assets to make it really look like one, with a lot of effects to just really amplify the just hype nature of this game. And it's a really good game, and it's one that I did sell, and there's times where I'm like, why did I sell this? So I'm always hopeful that Capcom will get around to re-releasing it. But this is a wonderful, wonderful intro that just does a really good job of getting hype, and I wish it was not an unlockable. I wish it was the actual available from the start intro that you got when you booted up the game. Alright, the other launch game that had a really hype intro, even if the game itself barely could contain what it was attempting to do, Sonic Adventure. This really kind of highlighted the change in attitude and focus that the Sonic series was going in, and I would argue has continued to follow. Sonic Adventure really is a defining moment in the history of the franchise, for better or for worse. Sonic Team really was ambitious with this game to make Sonic work in 3 dimensions, and in some ways it's still their most successful effort at actually making that work. It's kind of surprising to say that in 1999 they kind of got it well enough to make it fun, and they've had trouble trying to recapture that magic ever since, and have really just about run the gamut with about every gimmick that they can to make it work. But Open Your Heart is a blistering rock number from Crush 40 that, again, redefines what Sonic is going to be musically. It's not going to be what it was. It's going to be a different thing. All the characters have been redesigned. You get to see all of them here. It's got a really different vibe in terms of chaos being a major component of the story. And it really just does a good job at selling what Sonic is now about. Alright, let's end this little segment with what is probably the most predictable thing I could have thrown on here if you followed me at all. Skies of Arcadia. The absolute legend, my favorite Dreamcast game. Just a absolutely sea-buckling adventure, but I guess I should say sky-buckling because they're air pirates. I just love how this intro establishes the mood of what this game's about, because you immediately get what Vice and Ica and Fina and the supporting cast are all about. Like, you see that Ica's looking at a map, it goes up to Vice. You just kind of get their vibe almost instantly, that they're both smiling. And then you get the Valiant Empire, so you get a really quick rundown on the major antagonists, like almost immediately. In contrast to the bright skies and the joy, like all these people look grim. And then there's Fina, who's apparently in space. There's a moon. Shiny lights, so you kind of get a sense that she's important. And then you get a little bit of a world tour of what's going on in Arcadia. All the different moons. All these different cultures. And then the supporting cast of Drachma and Gilder, Balder, and all the other air pirates, and the crew members that you can recruit. Cute, adorable mascot. Ship battles are a part of this game. Get to watch Vice lead, which he is the lead, so it makes sense. You see him take over a Valiant airship. It just sells so much about what this game is instantly. Music time. I have gone through and picked 11 songs. You can see them all in front of you. That I just think really define the Dreamcast to me. Some of them are arcade ports, of course, especially once we get into the fighting games. But I feel like these songs really just like, when I think of the Dreamcast, these are the songs that leap to mind. So let's go ahead and start with Grandia 2. And we'll do about 30-45 seconds of each, and then I'll talk about it. So Carbo is a really just great town theme. It's the first one in Grandia 2 that you run into. I just have always found it to be super solid at capturing that introductory vibe that I really like in role-playing games. So it's my personal pick of the soundtrack. It's still my favorite song from this game. But I also think that Grandia 2 has a sensational battle theme. One of these days I should probably do a top 11 battle theme video, because I think that would be on it. I just think it gets your blood pumping. It gets you excited to do battle. And since Grandia 2 has a really dynamic battle system that requires a lot of strategy to make sure you cancel out enemy attacks, it just is perfect. It really just works super well with the gameplay mechanics to make a really engaging time. Skies of Arcadia. Of course I'm going to have Skies of Arcadia music on here. Why wouldn't I? It's one of my favorite soundtracks. Both the examples here are different takes on town themes. Both of them are melancholy, though, for different reasons. So we'll go ahead and sample both of them side by side, and then I'll talk about them afterwards. Lower Value, the first track, is a really, really emotional song because I think it captures the disparity between the rich and the elite that live in Upper Valua and the poor and destitute that live in Lower Valua. That song, just every time that I think of the vibe that when I hear that song, it really just makes me go, that place is just absolute garbage to its people. And it's scary. It's scary to think that that type of reality does exist for people all over the world that we live in reality. And that song just does such a good job at capturing that feeling of despair, and it just hits me. It really hits me emotionally every time I listen to it. Remote Town is kind of a different vibe. That is a place of giving up. It is a song that plays at a village that is full of washed up adventurers who have decided that the thrill of adventure is gone. They have no reason to really exert themselves any longer. And that's the vibe of the music as well. It's a song that just kind of calls to like the forlorn, the forgotten, the sense of absence, of drive, of desire. And I feel like it does a really good job at capturing that as well. Honestly, Skies of Arcadia, like I said at the top, is one of my favorite soundtracks. It just does so many things right, but I have always felt that those two town themes do a spectacular job at capturing a sense of desperation, but in two different ways, which I just really admire it for. Let's get into some Sonic stuff. We'll start with Open Your Heart from the original Sonic Adventure. As I said during the intro component, Open Your Heart is almost a call to the Sonic fandom in a way, because that's what they're asking you to do, because Sonic is not the same now. That was basically the mantra of 1999. They really were trying to say, look at how we've modernized our classic mascot to be relevant in the current generation. One can argue how successful that ultimately was in the end. I mean, Sonic still looks like he does in Adventure, more or less. There's now Generation Sonic that looks like the classic Sonic from the Genesis games. But it basically is asking you to surrender that sense of nostalgia, and Open Your Heart is that slogan. You need to open your heart to see what could be with change. And I feel like with the sequel, they continued that with Live and Learn. I will say that Sonic Adventure 2 is more confident in its music than the original was. I think the original was still a little tentative in a lot of ways. But Sonic Adventure 2 just decides, we're going for it. We're going to have a lot of Crush 40 songs in this. Capcom fighting games really, 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 really define the Dreamcast for me. So I've got 3 examples here. Like I said, all of these originated elsewhere, but they mean a lot to me, and I feel like they define the Dreamcast in a lot of ways. So let's start with some Marvel vs. Capcom 2, perhaps the most important fighting game Capcom put on the Dreamcast. Really just a wild soundtrack for MVC2. I really would love to have sat in on the planning sessions for that game, for them to go, you know what we need to do for MVC2? We need to abandon the soundtrack vibe that we've had from X-Men Children of the Atom all the way up to the original Marvel vs. Capcom and make it jazz as hell. The key thing about Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is that it was developed on the Naomi board, which was the sister to the Dreamcast's hardware. And with that came a lot of expansion to the sound capabilities for Capcom's sound team that they didn't have with their CPS2 boards. And it just really felt like they just went for it. And it kind of worked. It kind of worked for MVC2. It really did. And the success of that game just made that soundtrack so memorable. You might have expected me to pick the Character Select theme, Gonna Take You for a Ride, but I guess I took you for a ride by playing this theme for Ruby Heart Ship instead. Let's move on to Project Justice, which was Capcom's last major fighter on the system. I just love the energy of that track. It's so bouncy. It's so energetic. It's so hype. I just love. That's what my favorite stage in Project Justice is. That stage because of the music. It's probably one of the least interesting backgrounds, but the music on that stage just gets me pumped every time I listen to it. Last but not least for the Capcom stuff, let's talk about Street Fighter Alpha 3. This was one of the reasons I got a Dreamcast. I knew this port was coming, and while the Alpha 3 soundtrack is not my favorite Street Fighter soundtrack as a whole, it does have some really good songs, and I think Rose's theme, Scala, is one of the best compositions out of the series. The vibe of that track just really screams Rose to me. It really does. I just love the instrumentation on it. It sounds like it's reaching a little beyond the rest of the soundtrack in terms of like the choices that they made for the various instruments. I love the guitar. Guitar in quotes, of course. It's just a really good song that does a great job at capturing the essence of the character's stage. One last fighting game track, but this is from King of Fighters Evolution. SNK rearranged the soundtrack for the Dreamcast port, and I actually prefer it over the Neo Geo soundtrack. Let's get into a really nice jazzy number to kind of round out our fighting game selections with 176th Street, the Fatal Fury team theme. I just love the vibe of that. It really captures Terry. And it actually, when Smash Ultimate released the SNK soundtrack, when I was going through it all, just seeing 176th Street made me so excited. The fact that it's even on there twice. But it made me happy because this is such a good theme that captures both Terry and that SNK vibe that I've grown very familiar with in the years since my introduction to the King of Fighters with this game. And I don't think I could end this any better than with Guitar Vader's Magical Girl, one of the two songs that contributed to the original Jet Set Radio. I adore this song. It introduced me to Guitar Vader, and I have a bunch of their music that I managed to collect before they broke apart. But I just feel like this is their song. This is the defining song for their career. It's in Jet Set Radio. It managed to not get cut from Jet Grind Radio, the American version. It's just, it's magical. So good. So happy anniversary, Dreamcast. You are officially 24 now. Ugh. That makes me feel older every time I do one of these. I still adore that system. It means so much to me to this very day. And thank you for joining me on my little episodic adventure today. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts of Splatoon 3 so far and little Dreamcast anniversary. Special thanks once again to Kita Nash and her community for letting me have that chance to play with them last night. It was a lot of fun. I will see you when I see you. That's kind of the new motto around here. Thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful few days. Take care.